Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Ask the Experts series. I am Diane Southard, founder and CEO of Your DNA Guide. We are in the business of DNA education, wanting to make sure that you're making the most of your DNA and any DNA tests that you've taken. Today, I am joined by Erin Wolf, and let me just introduce you to Erin really quickly. Erin is a population geneticist and science communicator at Ancestry.com. So those are pretty actually big, fun, and all super interesting words that I hope we'll get Erin to talk about a little bit in a minute. But he is working currently on AncestryDNA's science for internal partners and transforming it into compelling stories for everyday customers. So I feel like, Erin, what you do for AncestryDNA is what Your DNA Guide is trying to do for everybody, right? We're trying to take this super complicated scientific concepts and language and break them down into pieces that people can consume or use to tell their own stories. So I love that that's your whole job. But you haven't always done this. You have served as an AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow hosted at the Federal Judicial Center, where you worked on topics of genomics and scientific evidence for the federal judiciary, which also sounds like something we could talk about for about 3 hours. That sounds fascinating. But your educational background, you have a PhD in genome sciences from the University of Washington and worked as a postdoctoral research fellow at Princeton University, where you studied the human genetics or the evolution of human genetics. So human genetics and evolution. So all of that was a lot. And I'd love for you to just kind of break it down for those who have joined us today. Mostly we're interested in how that journey shaped and prepared you for your current role at Ancestry.
Yeah, well, thanks, Diane, for having me today. It's really great. As you were saying, what I do is, for Ancestry is what you do for a large number of other services as well. And I really look to your work as an inspiration often and how to communicate these complex topics. So my background is I've always really been interested in origin stories, like even, Frommer's Greek mythology. And a lot of that, as I was entering college and getting into more academic stuff, was interest in human origins and the evolution from early human ancestors to modern humans. And I actually started as an archaeologist, so doing digs and looking at bones. And as I was finishing college, a paper came out from a research group in Germany that described the collection and sequencing of DNA from Neanderthals. And this blew my mind. I remember sitting in the library reading this and just being totally amazed. And that put me on this track into genetics and trying to use genetics to understand human history and human evolution. And just, again, those origin stories of where do we come from and how is that story told in our DNA. And so over the career, I've been looking at, very old human history, 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago. And coming to Ancestry has been a way to turn a lot of that same expertise and experience into much more recent human history, the past 50, 100, 500 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like that piece of just curiosity that you had, like maybe your whole life, it sounds like, about where am I from, right? I feel like that is a core human value that all of us have, and some of us act on it and some of us don't. But I feel like if you were to ask any person randomly in the grocery store, like, are you interested in this? They would all say yes, right? We all have that passionate interest. So I love that that you have gone the full gamut from like millions of years ago to like yesterday. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk some ancestry numbers. We love to know just kind of where Ancestry is at. We know that Ancestry is the leader in current genetic genealogy testing, but we want to know kind of what are your numbers processed DNA tests in the Ancestry database, which is different than kits sold, right? And then, of course, we're always interested in trying to get from companies like, where's your database coming from? Where's it largely coming from? And mostly, of course, we're interested in anybody that might be outside the US. So if you want to just shed some light on some of those numbers for us, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So our database size is today over 22 million individuals. And the majority of those are kits sold in the US. That remains like the main source of our database. The remainder are mostly from Great Britain, Canada, and Australia. And in terms of like the origins of those users, you can probably guess from those regions that most of our members have some amount of Northern or Western European heritage, which is pretty much the norm for a lot of large genomic databases, even in academia. That's very common. And yeah, the most commonly assigned region in our database is our England and Northwestern European region. But that also includes people who are only getting, 1% of that region. So there's a lot of people with, a lot of other ethnicities as well, which I think, is reflective of to use a cliche, the melting pot that that America is and the U.S. is. So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting and not surprising, of course. I think, I don't know. So maybe this is a little follow-up question. I just wonder, like, what does Ancestry think about the current composition of your database? Like, is it something that you're actively trying to pursue and change to get, more people, more diverse people? Or are you just really focusing on building to your current audience, which is, mostly Ancestry subscribers are in the countries you just mentioned? So like, what's the emphasis? What's the plan?
Yeah, we're always looking to increase the representation and diversity in our database because that improves the experience for all of our customers, not just not just individuals from those parts of the world, but all of the customers who are getting through that work more precise estimates and more specific estimates and results in general. And it is a major focus. If we talk about the ethnicity update that just came out this year, we'll get into some of those details, but we're seeing a lot of new regions added in parts of the world outside of Europe, like Asia this year specifically. And a lot of that comes from growing our customer base, increasing the diversity and representation within that, and also outside collaborations with other groups to bring in those important samples, because that kind of development, especially in the ethnicity regions, is all driven by the size and diversity of our reference panel. And so increasing that diversity is really important to us because, like I said, it improves the product for all of our users, not just individuals from those regions of the world, but everybody who's going to see improved precision and improved specificity in their results.
Okay. So yeah, let's just talk about that in a little more detail. So you're saying that the reason that Ancestry was able to update, and we want to hear the details about exactly what that update entailed, so don't leave that part out. But so you did this update, but tell us again the reasons why you were able to update. It sounds like it's a lot to do with your customer base. So what's the interaction between ethnicity updates being reliant on new customers versus, say, academia or other kinds of research that might pull in that information?
Yeah, so our ethnicity results are based on comparing any individual's DNA to our reference panel and saying essentially, which regions of the world or which populations in the world does your DNA look most like? And as our customer base grows and we are able to include people whose ancestry origins go back to many different parts of the world, we're able to increase the diversity of our reference panel. And so we're able to add new regions. So specifically this year, we added 3 new regions in Asia, which brings up our total number of regions in that area up to 24, which is, nice. I think, impressive and shows our commitment to creating a product that, is able to give results and provide important insights to all kinds of people around the world, regardless of their global origins. And driving that. So increasing the diversity and representation in our reference panel. A lot of that comes from increasing the diversity and representation of our customer base, and also working with creating collaborations with outside research groups that allow us to bring in samples from parts of the world where we may not have customers yet. So that's a way we can bridge into increasing the representation and providing regions for individuals from that part of the world.
Right. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg, right? You want customers from these countries, but if you don't have reference populations, you can't give them, the best product possible, right? Because you can't actually tell them stuff that you don't have the information for. But then anyway, so it's a struggle, right? And that's where all of our companies were in 2007 when this all started, right? And so I think it's important to recognize that don't you feel like we're still at the beginning of this? Like we still, from scientific process, like have a long ways to go before we'll have something that we consider like complete. Yeah.
I think that's a good way to put it. Definitely the chicken and egg problem. And I would say that, this is a topic that is of interest to all kinds of large genomic DNA studies, both at Ancestry, in academia. I was at the American Society of Human Genetics conference last year, and this was a major point of discussion on a lot of those research presentations was, are we doing enough to increase the representation of our research data sets? And that's something that we take really seriously, because we know, again, it's a commitment to provide a quality product to everybody, no matter their origins around the globe. And to do that, takes an investment from us to create and increase the diversity and representation in our data sets.
Right. And I love that you just said it. It's an investment. And I hope that everybody listening understands that Ancestry is making, all of our companies are making a financial investment, right, in creating this, but we can help, right? This is where citizen science comes in, right? So every person that's tested, again, we have the opportunity to contribute to this scientific research that's going on at our companies. And we can say, yes, please use my sample to help out with this effort. Because even though we think of diversity as being, not from the United States, for example, but there's all kinds of populations that are missing from these reference panels. I've been watching some of your guys' comments here in the chat, and some of you are saying, well, I'm this, but Ancestry says I'm this. And these are problems. There's a lot of reasons for them, right? But one of them is that they don't have a good reference population for the specific population you're from, right? So talk us through a little bit, Erin, how that works. Like if I am from some random small population in Europe that you don't have a reference population for, how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and something that I think is tricky to understand without getting too into the details of the science. Yeah. But with the ethnicity results, we are, like I said, looking at your DNA and comparing you to our reference panel and saying, these are the populations around the world who your DNA is most similar to. And if we don't have a population that you are, say, your family is from, you will be more similar to maybe a neighboring population, or a population that has a shared background with that group. So, for example, to give one example from our recent update, another of the regions we released is our Eastern European Roma ethnicity region. And prior to this, we know that individuals with that ancestry in their family were getting a mixture of ethnicities in their results. Regions like northern India, the Balkans, Anatolia, and the Caucasus. And this makes complete sense if you know about the history of the Roma and the migration that they took from northern India through those regions into Europe. And so if you're a very informed individual, and you know that, you can recognize that, and you can say, okay, these 3 regions I'm getting are probably representing my Roma origins. But now with this new ethnicity region, all of that information, collapses into a single, very clear, very understandable result. And that's really, again, from adding more individuals of that background to our reference panel and being able to create that kind of new ethnicity region. And by doing that, we're able to provide, much clearer results for individuals from that population.
Love that. Thank you. That was such a cool example. I love how science does that, right? And I think for non-scientists, it's hard to understand, but like in the initial round, you got this, right? And it was like, I don't love this. This doesn't perfectly match what I know. But because we added more data, you were able to coalesce all of that into one category. And it's beautiful, right? Because that one category does contain all of those origins. And it's a beautiful diversity point for that population. And so I love that you were able to see that in the data. That sounds so fun to me, to like take those three categories and see how certain people who have pieces of all three actually fit into this one category that groups them all together. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So that was super fun. Thank you for sharing that. As long as we're on the topic, let's talk just about the difference between the two different kinds of ethnicity results that you provide, the big percentages that we call ethnicity, and then these smaller, more targeted communities.
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to think about the difference between ethnicities and communities is the time frame. So usually we think about ethnicities as going way far back, like hundreds or even 1,000 years. And communities are a lot more recent, going back maybe 50 to 300 years. Really, something within the kind of time span you think of your family tree, like 5 or 10 generations. And ethnicities can help you understand, I think, the grand narrative of your family story, going way far back, spreading out to lots of different origins. Whereas communities are much more specific and direct connection. They're based on finding groups of ancestry members who have lots of shared matches with each other and who are directly connected. And they can show you very specific geographic areas where your ancestors likely live, sometimes down even to like the county level. And they can also show you how those ancestors moved over time. So I think using both of those and thinking about both of those as like different ends of the spectrum of ethnicities being this really, far back grand narrative kind of insight into your family story, and communities being this more recent, very specific insight into your family story. Looking at both of those is a great way to kind of synergistically come to understanding and making family discoveries.
I love that. I love that idea that it takes both. And that kind of speaks to your own journey, right? How you were studying all of these like super, super long time ago things, and now you're focused more on families. And I think that's how it has to be, right? That's your full story, which is fascinating that that's your own journey as well. Okay, so let's do one more question about ethnicity. Just tell us about some recent communities that Ancestry has launched, because to me that's the most exciting part, right? Because you're talking about these timelines, and while the long ago stuff is interesting and part of our story, most of us are stuck in this what I call genealogy sweet spot, the last 200 years. That's really what we're trying to figure out, and these communities speak directly to that. So tell us some of the things you feel like are important.
Yeah, and I think that the communities we've released this year really show the ability to create more diversity in our customer base and in our reference panels, because just recently we released over 350 Mexican and Mexican American communities, which show roots within all of the Southwest and into the deeper parts of Mexico as well. And before that, we released over 400 African American and Afro-Caribbean communities, which impacted, about 1.5 million members in our database. And so, along with these, often incredibly specific results, like I said, sometimes down to the county level, and information about when individuals in those communities moved between different parts of the country, between Southern California and Mexico, or Alabama and Detroit, for example, using that information along with records collections and the availability of records collections in the U.S. In Mexico can really facilitate, like you're saying, that like sweet spot of family history discovery within the past 100, 200 years, where you know where sort of family may have come from. Now this can give you a really specific location, and you can go to the county voter rolls. You can go to baptism records in local churches, search graveyards, things like that. And so that can really help you bridge that gap and make those family history discoveries.
I love that. And I love that it takes, we always say genetic genealogy, but so much of what we do is focusing on the genetics, but the genealogy is sometimes just as, or it's definitely just as, but sometimes even more important, right? It takes the marriage of these two technologies to really tell the full story. So I love that the Ancestry, at the same time as you're trying to do the genetic research and build up the genetic communities, you're also providing these record sets to help people actually connect, right? And tell the story.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
That's exciting. Okay, let's move to now your what I think is one of the most fascinating things that Ancestry has done in the last year, which is the SideView technology. Can you tell us a little bit more about, maybe even if you wouldn't mind, like what's the backstory? Like, how did you come to decide that this was even something that you could or wanted to develop, or how did this all even come about?
Yeah, so when we read your DNA, there's a lot we can tell you about you. We can tell you about your traits, your matches, your ethnicities, communities, everything we've been talking about so far. But we know that our customers are really motivated to learn more about their family stories, and taking that information and going, a generation back or more. And so we set out to develop SideView, and really this first of its kind technology to unlock those deeper family insights. And the way we figured to do that is, can we separate your DNA into the parts that you've inherited from each side of your family? So the DNA you inherited from your mom and the DNA you inherited from your dad. So for example, when a user wants to learn, where did my Mexican roots come from? That's something that we can tell them now with SideView. Or where did my dislike for cilantro come from? That's something we can tell them now with SideView. And so being able to separate the DNA based on each side of their family, telling you this is the DNA you inherited from your mom, this is the DNA you inherited from your dad, that's really allowing us to unlock those deeper family insights and allow users to go back even further in their genetic story.
So the SideView technology right now has a couple of different ways it's showing up on the website, right? So you can see it, as you mentioned, traits and ethnicity, but there's kind of two little, I don't know, portals, I guess. Will you tell us about like how you access or see the information from SideView?
Yeah, so you can absolutely see it in new features like ethnicities inheritance, where we're able to tell you, for example, you're 30% Germanic European, and now with SideView, we can tell you 20% of that is from your dad and 10% of that is from your mom. So you can see that in those results. You can also see it in your matches. So I think that's one of the big things that people find probably most useful, is now being able to separate your matches by parent and know this distant match, this person I'm connected to, they come from my dad's side of the family. And it doesn't, as you're saying, I think people really enjoy the sleuthing part of the family history research. And so it doesn't remove that sleuthing part, but it gives you, a sturdy first step to begin that journey. And that can be a really great entry point for people that are, not as familiar with genealogical research or not as comfortable with it yet. So being able to organize your matches by parent side is really a major improvement.
I agree.
And then, yeah, in traits as well, that we have what we call traits inheritance, where we can show you which parent genetically contributed more to any of your traits.
Yeah. So Elizabeth has this question I'm going to throw up here. It says, does SideView get weird with lots of cousin marriages or endogamy? That applies also to her traits question. So how does it work if you have a lot of intermarriage or endogamy? Does SideView is still valuable, or how does that work?
Yeah. So the principle behind SideView, the clever piece of it is that most of the time, you're only related to your matches through one side of your family, through one of your parents, and that's enabled us to use your matches to separate your DNA into these separate sides. So that's the background of how SideView works. Is we use your DNA matches as a way to organize your own DNA into a parent, a mom's side and a dad's side. And it's based, like I said, on that premise that any match is only connected to you through one side of your family. And so, yeah, as you get into more endogamous populations, that can cause some issues, especially it can create lots of matches that match both sides of your family, and so it can sort of cloud that, but again, as the database grows and we are able to collect more distant matches, able to find more that are useful and informative in the way that we need them to be, matching to only one side of your family. So I think SideView results will continue to improve as more people participate, and we're able to get more of those kind of matches to help organize your DNA.
Awesome. So what you're saying is, again, we're still in the beginning of this technology, and it has a long ways to go, including possibilities of helping people with endogamy. But for right now, if you're looking through your DNA matches and you see a ton of matches that say both, that's actually a clue to you that you do have some endogamy that you may need to look into, and that's going to affect, how you analyze your DNA results in its entirety. So if you weren't already aware, SideView and its technology is one way to help you become aware that your parents actually do come from the same population, and that's something you need to be aware of. But then Angelic Morning has a question that I hope everybody's asking, and I'm certainly asking this. Will you eventually do a SideView to split up your grandparents?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I unfortunately can't comment on where these technologies are going to go, but it is the most simple solution to this at the moment is we talk about how SideView lets you separate your DNA without having your parents tested. If you are able to get your parents tested, that's a way to get those kinds of insights for yourself as well. But yeah, I can't comment on where this is going in the future.
That's okay. I think I'll comment on it because you can't, and I'll say, yeah, because isn't that what this is all about, you guys? Isn't this what we're all in this for, is to be able to reach deeper and farther back into our family histories? There is a way. Like technically, this is a possible thing that can be done, to take my DNA and split it into my grandparents. Let me tell you what it's going to take. It's going to take a lot of research effort on the part of whichever company decides to take this up. And obviously, Ancestry is interested in this field. But it's also going to take a lot of people testing, namely people from your family. So if you want to be in a position to influence or take advantage of any future SideView features like separating your grandparents, even if you don't have your parents to test, you need all of your siblings to test, and you need all of your first cousins to test, and you need all of your second cousins to test. And if you do that, you will put yourself in a better position to take advantage of this kind of technology in the future, because that's what it's going to require. So more testing, I think, is what it's going to take. But there's my soapbox. You didn't have to say anything, Aaron, but I really sincerely believe that is where this technology is headed, and it's very exciting. I mean, anytime anybody asks me about the future of DNA and family history, this is the answer. We have to be able to go back farther than we can, and the only way we can do that is by having older people tested, but they're dead, so we have to do it a different way, and I think this is the way, and that's just like super, super exciting. Let's see, we've got about 2 more minutes. So I just want to make sure we get my last question in, which is what I think is the most important, which is, Aaron, why is the work of family history important to you? What keeps you going to work every day in this particular job? And why do you think that this is exactly where you need to be?
Yeah, like I said at the start, I've always really been interested in origin stories, and I think family stories are like the classic origin story. I think there's always a great way to tell those. Everybody has the apocryphal myths of where they came from or what uncle did what to get somewhere else. So that's always been an interest of mine. And I think doing what we can to facilitate that and to help people make those discoveries is just a really excellent and meaningful experience. And I would also say that, similar to the work that you do, Diane, is I think that coming from a background in genomics, I think this is a really important kind of information. People are going to be coming in contact with their DNA more and more in the future. I mean, this is my personal opinion, but in your medicine and whatever, your fitness app, whatever that is, and I think that this is a really great educational way to bring people into what that means, what DNA is, how you understand it, and I think doing that through the lens of family history and through your personal family story is a great way to make that information, help people absorb that information. So those are the two reasons why I think family history is such a great piece of working at Ancestry and why it's important to me.
I love that, Aaron. I think that was really insightful about the power that learning this in your own family and about yourself will have in the future for ourselves and for our children and grandchildren, as DNA and its implications has a huge role to play in the future in all sorts of areas in our lives. And I love that thought. Thank you for sharing that. I had not considered that before. So we've had lots of comments in the chat. People obviously have tons and tons of questions. So there's a couple ways you can get more questions answered. So number one is like our YouTube channel right here, right now, and that way you'll be informed anytime we go live. We have had such a great time meeting with experts like Aaron. Next week on Monday, we'll be meeting with Johnny Pearl from DNA Painter, and so you'll want to catch up with us there. And that will be the official end of our October Ask the Expert series. But it has been so much fun that we're going to do it again very soon. So if you want to be on the list to be informed about when we're doing this, we're going to put a link here in the chat where you can sign up for email announcements. So we'll remind you when it's time to come to Ask the Experts, but importantly, you'll get the email from today. So Ancestry has a lot of actually really fantastic sales and things going on this week and next, and we want to let you know about all the things we love about Ancestry. So that will be coming in an email to those of you who signed up for that service. We will also be sending you some links about our blog posts about SideView and about ethnicity results and all kinds of things that we have resources to help you make the best of your Ancestry DNA testing experience. So sign up for that, and that makes sure that you are on the list and get all these new fun announcements. But mostly, we just hope that you will continue to spread the good word. I think somebody said that actually in the chat. Spread the word about the power that DNA testing has in your family history. Reach out to your family members who haven't been tested. They tell a different story than you do about the same ancestors that you share. So getting their perspective in addition to yours is going to tell a better, fuller, more complete picture of your family history. And that's what we really want. We want to be able to tell the full story of our ancestors. So thank you again for joining us. We are so excited to have you always joining us and always here with us live. It's been really fun. Thank you so much, Aaron, for taking time out of your really busy schedule to be with us today. We sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Good. Okay. Bye, everybody. See you next week.